Much for having me. I think my mission statement for today is to try to weave some of these threads into a broader national picture about why we would care about this issue and what might happen in Ohio means for the rest of the country and what Ohio can do to advance the national conversation. First, I'll say thanks for having me, of course, and this is a little bit of a homecoming for me. I got my start in my career as a state legislative aide. I was in Massachusetts. I was a counsel to the Senate Majority Leader. So I really understand how much good work happens at the state and how much positive change you can enact. I also, in my elementary school years, grew up in Hartville, and I don't have a whole lot of distinct memories besides cornfields and gravel roads, but it left me without a Massachusetts accent, which I think is probably a good thing on the whole. So we all know that privacy is very popular. I think that that's something intuitively people feel, and studies back it up. 38% of people said that privacy was the #1 issue for them on their mobile device. A full 86% of internet users have taken some affirmative step to protect their privacy. So they're not just talking about it, they're trying to do things about it. And really the question is, how can all of us help people take more positive steps to protect their privacy? So why? Why do people care about privacy? What's going on out there that makes that so important? And I think that the answer is relatively straightforward. Over the last decade or two, I think folks have come to the realization that there's a lot of information out there about all of us. A lot of records, a lot of personal information, and it's not clear that there are real controls on that, like how that is going to be used and what's going to be done with it. And I think that that's created sort of just a fear in the public. What's happening here? Why is who's got all this stuff and why? And that, I think, intuition is completely correct. We live today in a world of records. Everything we do is essentially recorded. Whether it's our movements, are recorded by our cell phone, the things that we're interested in are recorded by our search terms and our emails. License plate readers record where our car is on a routine basis, where our car might spend the night, for example. Our political affiliations are out there all the time, and the things that we put online, and the photos we may post. So there's just a tremendous amount of personal information about us. And what we've seen is, as these new technologies have arisen, whether it's the internet, whether it's cell phones, whether it's license plate readers, whether it's drones. Oh, and by the way, the drone people hate the word drones. I was on a panel yesterday with it was a women in aerospace panel, and they were talking about UASs, unmanned aerial systems. And there was literally the guy who they brought in to do the half-an-hour explanation of what a drone is, spent probably 10 minutes talking about why they're not really drones. And then I had to get up and call them drones for like 15 minutes. But drones, we're potentially monitoring our movement in real space. We're also, as Gary mentioned, seeing old information used in new ways. Things like, we've always had driver's licenses, and for a long time we've had photos on them, but they haven't been facial recognition databases up until very recently. So at the same time all this technology has been changing and evolving, the law has, frankly, mostly stayed the same. The law that protects your email and keeps your email private was passed in 1986. It has not been substantially updated since. I'm looking around this room and thinking, how many of the people in this room were born after 1986? I don't want to dwell on that. That makes me feel old. But suffice to say, Top Gun was still in the theaters. And so you can imagine that that's not a particularly good fit for today's internet age. It's amazing. We've been using cell phones for really more than 2 decades, but they've been pretty much widespread use for about 2 decades. Congress has never ruled on has never passed a law governing what the standard should be for law enforcement access to location information on a cell phone. It's astonishing to me. I mean, sort of this kind of core basic information that I think everybody is worried about has never been really safeguarded in any consistent, meaningful way. So, I mean, why do we care? I mean, I often get that question. It's like, well, I think I care about privacy, but I'm not entirely sure why. You know, there are some, I think probably the biggest thing is also the hardest thing to convey. You know, there's an awful lot of scientific research that says when someone is watching you, you behave differently. You tend to be more conservative is sort of the scientific term, but basically you take less risks, not politically conservative, but you're less likely to do something different or wild or crazy because you're worried what other people will think. And I think that, you know, surveillance by technology can exacerbate this trend. You worry something you do or say could still be out there, could come back and embarrass you 10 years later. You know, things as you're experimenting with new thoughts and ideas, that those might come back, and something that you flirted with for a few days in college is now a permanent record that may be dug up when you're going for a position 10 years later. It also identifies people who are particularly vulnerable. Marketing companies have sold in the past lists of suffering seniors, people who are ill and may be more easily susceptible to a marketing pitch, or maybe, you know. And the New York Times described one particular example. 92-year-old veteran Richard Guthrie was bilked out of more than $100,000 through these marketing scams. And he was identified on a list of these sort of suffering seniors who may be sort of easy marks for these kind of scams. So information can be used against you. Incorrect information can harm you. We all know that information is not always correct. I don't have to tell you that government doesn't always get it right. I know you'll be shocked to learn that, but it's true. There are incorrect information in government databases. In Ohio, there was, for example, an incorrect match in a biometric driver's license system, and a particular driver had to spend a couple of weeks essentially getting his license back because they revoked his license because of an incorrect biometric match. FBI background checks make mistakes. People lose out on jobs because of mistakes in the system. And even if the mistake is corrected down the road, you don't always and often don't get the job back.